right. Hey, everyone. I'm Alyssa Gardner. I'm the Event and Program Manager. I work primarily with the Grad Academy, which we'll be talking about a bit tomorrow, and then also some with Student Services. And today we have a panel of your graduate student experts to answer questions for you about making the most out of your graduate school experience. So before we dive in, let's do some introductions. Do you want to start?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Claudia. I'm entering my third year in the PhD program in teaching and learning, and I look at disability in education.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vanessa Nunez, and I am dissertating this year. Last year, hopefully, I'm in the PhD program in sociology. And my research broadly is on undocumented student access to higher education and how faculty and staff help change policies and procedures to institutionalize resources for them.
Thank you. Nicole?
Hi, everyone. My name is Nicole Thomas. I'm president of our Graduate Professional Student Association, and I'm also a PhD student in the Educational Psychology Department. My research focuses on misconceptions in science and how we could better train our science educators to address those misconceptions.
Awesome. Dadson?
Hi, everyone. Sorry I couldn't join in person, but my name is Godson Ebenezer Johu, and I'm a PhD candidate, actually in civil environmental engineering. My research focused on using remote sensing to solve water quality related issues. And I was the immediate past vice president of Graduate and Professional Student Association, GPSA. Yeah. All
right, well, thank you all so much again for joining us. As you see, we have some folks online, some folks here, and I have all sorts of questions for you about your graduate school experience. All of our participants here are pretty lucky because these are some very involved folks to lend to these questions. But before I get into my set questions, do any of you students have questions for them first? All right, well, we'll dive in, and if anything comes up, feel free to interject or type it in the chat there. So my first question for you all, and whoever wants to take it first, what sort of involvement opportunities have you participated in on campus?
I can go ahead and take this away because I've literally just come from other meetings. But I talked about our student government a bit. It's not just kind of like a student council, but it was really the first opportunity that I found that I could actually advocate for what students wanted. I feel like we were actually able to like make a difference, which is important to me because I feel like a lot of times we get involved in things and it's hard to like actually measure whether or not you're making a difference. A good example of this is oh my gosh, it was just in March. We went up to the state legislature with 60 students and we advocated for increasing our graduate assistant stipends. And before that moment, I know I'm so excited about it. Before that moment, no one really understood what graduate students did, what the type of research they were doing, basically how we contributed to the community. So it was a really unique opportunity for me and 60 of my friends to essentially say, hey, here's the research that we're doing. Here's how we contribute to the community. Here's why that's important. And it ended up making a difference. UNLV was awarded, I believe, around $20 million to significantly raise our graduate assistant stipends. Obviously, like the work is not done there. There's other things to do, but it's just kind of an example of how you could get involved completely outside of the classroom and really get involved in life-changing things for a lot of our students. So highly encourage you to like join different groups and clubs and things like that.
Yeah, I've served as a representative for the College of Ed, specifically for my department on GPSA, and I've really enjoyed that because I get to find out, there's like a lot of information where like, where do I find this? How do I share this? Like, and you'll have people asking you these things. And so I found it really helpful to be able to learn about that through there, or like hear things that are in the pipeline. And then I can tell people like, oh, we can get involved in that. But I've also been involved in quite a few like mentorship things, and I really recommend that. Sometimes there's like certain skills, right, that you develop through mentorship that I think are really important. So the Grad Rebel Advantage program, which I think all three of us have served on, and was like a really great opportunity, and I really recommend that you get to work with like 7 students and just help guide them and like answer their questions about graduate school. And so that's one of the things that I've done.
So I've been involved with, I guess, like UNLV community work also. So my research focuses on documenting student access to higher education. I've built bonds with students on campus in the past when they started like their own registered student organization at the undergraduate level. And I kind of make connections then. So I always feel like networking is really important. Like there's never not an opportunity to network and kind of connect with folks if you're interested in a particular area or need that you might see. So I've worked with the past undocumented resource coordinator and the current one, and I've served on like scholarship reading committees for a scholarship that they got through CSUN. I also helped establish the Latinx graduate student organization. We didn't have one before. So this is our third year, I think, that we're around, and I'm VP this year, Claudia is president. So if you are interested in an organization and you don't see one, there's an opportunity for you to create one as well. What else have I done? I've served as like graduate student rep in my department as well. So that's where you get to go sit in faculty meetings, kind of really see what's going on behind the scenes. And then you get to pass that information on to like other graduate students. I think if there's anything you're interested in, there's always a way to get involved somehow. But always like go up, talk to folks, say hi, you know, connect. And I think that's like an easy way to kind of just get conversation started.
Thank you. Gadsden, would you like to jump in?
Oh yeah, I think they've said almost everything, but I've also had the chance to lead effort to establish the African Student Alliance to replace an old organization that had to go into extinction due to one or two reasons. So, and I serve as the president till May when someone took over. So, and I was also the vice president for GPSA. Before then, I was the treasurer. So I was also part of the students that went to Cassie City to advocate for increase in student stipend. So aside this, I did other things, including serving on committees at the grad college as a rep from GPSA. And then also I did some kind of mentorship program in the LSAM Louis Stock Minority Alliance participation, where I mentor a set of undergraduate students in the STEM program. I also participated in quite a number of graduate school programs and events, including the grad Rebel Ambassadors program, where I was ambassador for the grad college in some programs. And then I was also a grad Rebel Advantage mentor, where I mentor undergraduate students as well. So I've also participated in the postgraduate career pathway program, and then also some workshops here and there, and then the literacy badges. So I've done a couple of things, and I think there are a lot of opportunities for you to get involved. As my co-panelists have said, UNLV creates that kind of platform where you're just not a student, but you have opportunities to participate in, and they are all available to you, and they come at no charge to you. And these are things to build yourself, and then so that at the end, you leave the school holistically trained and not just getting your degree.
Thank you, very well put. So yeah, lots of opportunities and things that you can even create yourself. Very cool. So my next question, in your experiences, how have you been able to make connections and find community on campus?
Well, if we're keeping the same order, okay, let's see. So honestly, I know I keep talking about like student government and things like that. It helped me also meet people through my department. So I found that to be really, really important too. Because a lot of times you kind of show up to class and then you're like, okay, great, and now I'm just gonna go home, do my work. Even just kind of being brave enough to form study groups, I found was really, really important. We started like a little writing group for one of my stats courses, which was weird because it was stats. But we were like, hey, we're all in the same program anyway, so we might as well, you know, get together and start writing. And it helped, you know, we were able to apply to conferences together. We were able to, you know, potentially work on a publication, you know, out like way down the line. But there are a lot of different things that like, even just talking to your classmates, you will find that a lot of people have similar interests to you. And I think that's really important because like when I first came to college, I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing and I don't know what I should be doing. So I kind of just look to my peers for guidance, and I find that other people also do that too. So, you know, you could create affinity groups, you could kind of get involved with like Latinx student organization, all of these different kinds of things where you find your people, you know, and I think that's really, really important because UNLV has 27,000 students, potentially more than that, but there's about 5,000 graduate students, you know, so it's important to kind of find that group that you feel comfortable with, and finding people within your department too. So all of that's a long-winded way to say make friends, but it's important. And I think that really got me through like the more difficult parts of graduate school as well.
Yeah, I think that's similar for me. My previous program operated in like the cohort format, right? And so that was really nice. Like I knew the 4 people that I was in the program with. But my current one, it's sort of everybody's at different stages, and it would be so easy to get really isolated and kind of lost and not really know like what I'm supposed to do or not really make those connections. And so I agree that things like study groups and writing groups are like really nice ways to connect with people and sort of see where everyone is at and just like try to find people that you can create community with. It makes a huge difference.
So I'm gonna be really frank. I think a lot of times the way you build community too is like your own experience, right? In our department, there's been issues, right? So I think sometimes when problems arise, you kind of find community with other folks who maybe have gone through similar things. So for example, we had for a while like a graduate student of color kind of like coalition in our department for various reasons, and we kind of like started to build that, and we did like our own thing. Sometimes we would meet on Fridays and just like hang out, talk, bring in like our own readings, do like whatever. That's kind of fizzled out because of like things that we all have kind of going on in our lives, right? But I will say that like going to events that align also with like your personal beliefs, you'll always find that. And then also to remind you that not everything is always like on campus. You can find community outside of it as well. And the reason that I say that it's because I found it during also like COVID, since that was a really isolating time. I connected with my disciplines association, so like the American Sociology Association, and they have like a Latinx, a smaller chapter. And so through there, I found other grad students with like similar interests. I've connected with them. They're at other institutions, and we've kind of kept that connection going. We like hang out when we go to conferences, which has been really nice. And I've been lucky to make like friends, I think, that are even outside of my department, because sometimes you'll find that if you don't find folks that are like minded in your department, you can always find someone outside of it, and that's not a bad thing, because then you can kind of be like, oh, how does stuff work in your department? Well, in my department, it works like this. And you kind of just give each other advice, I guess, and kind of support in other ways that you may not necessarily know.
Yeah, I guess they've said it all, but opportunities on campus are a great way to create that community. So I happen to be the president of African Students Alliance, as I mentioned, and we did the election in April, and then like officially handed over in May. So I have the opportunity to be that leader for students who are international students. Most of them are international students. They just come to a country where they have no connection, they don't know anybody, and then they feel like they get to school and then they see people of the same origin from them. So they feel welcome. They feel like this is a community too. So I have opportunity where people come to me, they talk to me about their challenges. They tell me that they talk to me about what their problem is. And as the president, I try to create that kind of platform. I connect them to various resources. And I feel that is something that is an opportunity the community is creating. So for example, I have students come to me, they need some help, and then I have to connect them with GPSA because I'm also in GPSA. I have to talk to Nico at some point that someone is in this need and then they need some emergency assistance. And then because I know the person, because the person is in African student, it makes it easier. Those resources are there. They may not be aware of, or they may not know, but because of that sense of community that we have, it makes it easier. And having even handed over yesterday, I had someone called me because a Ghanaian had come to UNLV, and then they had to call me about, and not just that, I mean, I had a hint that people were coming. I have to follow up with them, call them. Are you okay? How are you getting to UNLV? Do you have a means of transportation? How will I help? And that kind of thing. So it's transcended. Just because I've been ASA president, I'm getting that it's not like a community to the extent that people feel like maybe I finished school and I've left, but they are still contacting me. And so I can imagine that leaving you, if I happen to leave UNLV like soon, that community is going to be there because they know me as like maybe the face of ASA or someone who can easily help. So it's because of that community. So that opportunity is going to go on forever. And then I may also end up introducing people to other people that may be helping. So we form that community. It's been really a great opportunity. Though I'm most of the time at the helping end, but I feel like my ability to help those people is fulfilling to me, and that the joy I derive from that is the greatest, actually. So that's I can say about that.
Well, thank you, Al. It's neat to hear, finding support and community from pretty different avenues, but it's out there. So beyond those aspects, how would you say your involvement in UNLV activities, or maybe your involvement in those communities, has impacted your overall graduate school experience?
So, gonna be also frank upfront, like grad school is hard. Like it's a very hard thing to do. It's not impossible, because if it were impossible, there would be no one here. But it's like one of those things that's kind of difficult. And I have found that it's like not my classes that keep me going. It's not like the cool, great things I'm studying, but it's honestly like the people that I've been working with and the people who now like rely on me and I rely on them. So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, if I don't show up this week, then like Godson said, maybe this student won't get help, or like if this other person's not here, then maybe, like it becomes a way that we rely on each other. And I think that's important, because that's how you build a community that cares about one another. Like each person has a role in that community. And it's important to make yourself available to other people, to like be important to other people, but also to be comfortable enough to rely and trust other people too. And I think that's a hard thing to do, because like as humans, we're not like, I don't know, sometimes you're very trusting, but sometimes you're not, so I think a lot of times you have to kind of recognize that everyone else is also kind of in the same boat. And rising tide lifts all ships. So it's kind of recognizing that you are a part of something bigger than yourself. And it's important to like protect your own space, but also to help other people as well. And I have found that like those are the things that keep me going when I'm like struggling in courses or things like that, is knowing that like there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and that like other people want me to make it across that finish line too. Like it's not just me, like my family wants me to graduate, like my friends want me to graduate, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, this will keep me going. And I found that to be really, really important aspect of just existing within the social community.
I think for me, sometimes my research just gets really depressing and like difficult to work with, because sometimes it's just like looking at horrible things that people have experienced, and I just feel like we're not doing anything about this. We're kind of just talking about these stories, and so like having very real ways of getting involved and actually like helping each other, and giving people access to resources, like that feels really good. And usually like that's what can keep you going when like this stuff gets really stressful and sad.
Can you provide me the question?
Yeah, how has your involvement in UNLV activities or communities impacted your overall grad school experience?
Yeah, I think I've kind of built supports, right? I kind of make this joke very often, and sometimes it doesn't even feel like a joke, where I'm like, I'll quit right now. Like I'm ready, I'm done, like I'm over it, but I'm very lucky to have really supportive friends that will remind you like, no, you're so close, like you have to do this. And like sometimes things can be very overwhelming, like even when you think about a dissertation, right? Like you're like, how the heck do I even like start, right? And then you break it down into smaller chunks, and then you have like someone like, yeah, well, I'm doing this, and like I'm working around it this way, and be like, oh, that's interesting, like I should utilize like that strategy, right? I think for me too, like again, right, going back to networks, that has been really helpful for me as well. Like if anytime I have a doubt, I know like I can email somebody because I've connected with them in the past, right? And it doesn't feel like a cold email. It's like, hey, how are you? Like, I hope your semester's going well. Just wanted to check in. Also, by the way, like, what do you know about this, right? Or if I see something, that's another way too that I think is important, even if it's the smallest thing. Like sometimes I'll send Claudia an email, and like we can be messaging like on other things. I'll be like, hey, I thought this might be like something of interest to you, or like they'll send me like a paper that they think might like be something that I might be interested in, right? It's like those small things that I think like show like, oh, someone's like thinking about me, or like, oh, I've mentioned that before. So that's kind of like one of the ways that it's kind of helped me get through.
All right, yeah, I think my involvement in grad school activities has really shaping my grad school experience in several ways. One, I feel like I get inspired because I've been able to help people. I've been able to get involved with people. So the inspiration and the joy from that has really shaped my grad school journey. And it also takes me away from books aside. So my grad school experience is just not about me being embedded, learning and studying every time and doing research. But then I have other activities that when I get burned out, when I get tired, there's something to go and laugh about. Maybe there is some program or there's some open house event or something that you can meet students to talk to and then get some kind of different perspective about other things aside books. I feel like my experience has exposed me to connections and networks. So right now, if I need something, I can get a fair idea of who do I call in my contact list, who do I email in my contact list, because I've known them out of my exposure to grad school activities or activities in the universities. And also the people have become family, like friends turn into family. So sometimes I call some people and we are just talking about other things, or I may be going through something that they have gone through, a similar thing. So just by virtue of knowing them through my involvement with UNLV, I've become like family to them, that we could share and we could support each other. So again, the support system, as someone has mentioned, the UNLV so has become like a support system. There are so many opportunities in the school. I don't think that if I hadn't got myself out there involved, I wouldn't know about most of them. Their support is available for every student, but it also takes you to know, and people don't know because they are not involved. They don't get to ask. So me getting involved has exposed me to all this support system that I can easily tap into. So yeah, so I think that's about it. Yeah, what I'll say. Let me end it. Yeah.
Thank you. So for the next one, there might be a little bit of overlap from what you've shared, but given the theme of this panel workshop here, in what ways can new grad students make the most out of their first year?
So having an understanding of like, I think how long things take in terms of publishing, grants, conferences, all of that kind of stuff. It's really, really important to kind of sit down and look at like a timeline of what should be happening or what you want to be happening within that year. Oftentimes, like you will apply for a conference a whole year in advance. You know, so if you're just coming in, you're like, I don't have research yet. That's okay. Just know that this time next year is when you should be applying. So it's one of those things, like I will put things in my calendar for like 6 months from now, where I'll be like, NAED fellowship, apply by October 1st. You know, I'll completely forget about it by August, but that's why it's in my calendar. So it's those types of things where it's like you really want to look at a long-term timeline and try to get involved in as many things, or at least know about the resources once you start off. That goes for grants, that goes for conferences or professional organizations that you're interested in applying for. I think a lot of times it's helpful to talk to your faculty member or other students in your department who have already been there. You know, so finding people who might be 3 or 4 years in and say, hey, like, what are you working on? Like, what should I be working towards? You know, because a lot of times I will find out about something and be like, oh, I should have done that my first or second year. And that happens a lot with like fellowships and things like that. So just kind of try to become familiar with what's available within your realm of research and talk to your faculty member. Like always talk to faculty because they know things, whether or not like they're like apt at sharing that. You know, sometimes it's difficult because sometimes I think they just work it into like their little brain schedules and then they're like, oh, I didn't even think to share this with you, but it doesn't hurt to ask. You know, so ask about grants, ask about conferences, professional development workshops, different things that you could attend. And then obviously try to get involved with a club or an organization, because I have found that those often have like several different levels of individuals involved. So that way you could meet someone who's a 4th year PhD student and go, oh, great, I had no idea about all of these things that you did over the last 4 years. That's something that I could do as well. So lots of different layers to it, but just try to get as many resources as you can within that first, you know, block of time.
Yeah, I think the first year can sort of be really overwhelming in terms of like understanding how graduate school works, right? And so the classes are a lot more intense. The kind of writing that you're doing is going to be more intense. The conversations, just how the classes work is just really different from undergrad. And I think it can be easy to get caught up in that and end up with like a very unsustainable schedule. Like I know for me, it was kind of modeled that I would only get like 1 day off a week and then the rest of the time I'd just be working, and that was not sustainable. And so I think that first year, definitely prioritizing self-care and community time and like some breaks is so important, as well as actually getting involved in things that make you feel good, and involved on campus where you're not just stuck in your office writing. I think it's really important.
Yeah, I think I agree with Claudia in terms of like checking your, like where you are also. Something I do want to mention is, you know, a lot of folks coming into grad school, you don't really know what grad school really entails, right? There is a hidden curriculum, which a lot of folks won't tell you about. You don't come in with the social and cultural capital to really understand what's happening, right? So even now, we're talking about conferences, we're talking about associations, we're talking about fellowships, we're talking about grants. What is that, right? Like, I know coming in, when I first started grad school, mind you, I took like time off between like my bachelor's and getting into grad school also. I was like 5 years, I was an academic advisor here. So my experience is completely different, right? Coming back, I had no idea coming in, like what to expect, kind of what was going on. I had been gone from school for some time, so getting back into the swing of things while working full-time was really difficult. There is a book by a sociologist, Jessica Calarco, and it is on the hidden curriculum of graduate school. So if folks are interested, that's a good way to kind of like get some information, because there is a lot of stuff that you're not going to know, and that is okay. But I think good advice that Nicole gave was like, get to know like the folks who have been in the department a while, right? One thing that I do ask is that if you like make a connection with someone and they share something with you, don't divulge it to somebody else if it is something personal, if it is something that, you know, is like about their experience in the department. Build that trust, build that connection, so you can get that genuine support and that genuine like understanding as well, right? I think it's like a give and take, right, about getting through grad school, offering support while also getting support. It's very reciprocal, but I also go back to what Claudia was saying, right? It's like find something that is sustainable for you. Everybody's gonna go at a different pace. Also, don't ever compare yourself to somebody else, because someone may come in first year, they may have a publication, they may have like an advisor that they're already working with, right? They may have like this plan and you don't. That's okay. It's your first year, right? So yeah, I think that's like what I can.
All right, yeah, I think everybody has shared in like kind of what I would say that would make, what I would say that when you do those things, you help you make the best out of your first year. But I mean, in summary, I think you just being here, you just being in this program or listening to us, wherever it is one way to make the best out of your first year. Because there are a lot of opportunities that are shared here. There are a lot of things that the panelists are talking about that when I came to UNLV, I didn't know about. So I happen to be in a PhD program, which takes like 4 years. So first year, second year, first year, maybe part of second year, though they are gone, I got to make use of my third year or later part of my second year, third and maybe fourth year. But someone doing the master's may just have 2 years. And if you don't get exposed to some of these opportunities, by the time you realize you're almost out of UNLV and you feel like you just came for your degree. So that's why I say you listening to us right now is one of the best way to make, one of the things to do to make the best out of your first years, because in a university, I mean, though, if you get embedded with your books, you get like your research and everything, you feel like you are just isolated. Every other thing becomes secondary to you. So you will know what is happening and you will know about all these opportunities that we are talking about. So one way that I would say is that first, you always need to ask. There are things there, but if you don't ask, like Nicole said, you need to ask your advisors, you need to ask people outside your department, you need to ask your friends. So you need to ask, you need to seek by going for it, and you need to knock when you have to knock. So asking is very important. So you need to ask. Make sure that you are that person who is ready to learn. You should be ready to learn, and also you should be ready to be taught. So it should be a teachable person, because someone may, like, based on your reaction in the first interaction, the person will just feel like this person doesn't want to learn. So no matter what you are exposed to, be ready to learn and make sure that you seek information. So that's what I would say. And then someone also mentioned that you may come with people who have advisors who are this, who have publications, who have this, and you may feel compelled to, but everybody has their own journey. Whenever you have your own time and you need to use in your first year, it may be difficult to make that time, but whenever an opportunity comes, try to think about things differently in a way that, what can I do? If I'm finishing this school in 2 years, what do I want to come out of the school? I'm finishing in 4 years, what do I want to come out of the 4 years? And probably start working it backwards. And maybe by the time you leave the university, you may have achieved all what you plan or what you have to achieve. That's what I would say.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you talked about the hidden curriculum. Is that just like a baseline knowledge, or what do you mean by
Yeah, so again, right, sometimes it's like just like the steps of the program. Sometimes it's like knowing that there are conferences that you can go to, that there is like funding for you to apply for, right, that you can get some support to pay for like your trip. How to publish, like how to write a manuscript, right, to then send out for publication. What are the steps for that? Knowing that you can write with somebody, right? There's just so many things that you can do in graduate school that you just don't know. So that's, I think, what I mean about the hidden curriculum, but also like, there are folks who are in graduate school whose own parents may be academics, right? So their idea and understanding of what graduate school looks like is completely different from someone coming in first gen, right? You have no idea what's available to you. You have no idea what this path and journey is going to be like. And that's, I think, what I mean when I say hidden curriculum, but there's like a whole gamut of things of like the way people explain it. It could be funding, right? Because sometimes you get funding, sometimes you don't, right? And it's not always guaranteed. So then can you look for outside sources? I, for a long time, went with like really bad mentorship because no one really had like the mentorship that I needed or gave me information that I didn't know I needed, right? I was lucky that they hired on a Latinx faculty member at my department who I connected with and was put under. And she gave me so many things to apply for, like fellowships I never even knew that I could qualify for. I've been so lucky, like last year, I was a Ford Fellow. The Ford Fellowship is a super prestigious, like national fellowship. I think I'm the first one at UNLV to ever get it. So I never would have applied had this like professor never said like, hey, what about this? And that funded my entire year last year. So things like that, right? It's like, I never would have known that this thing existed had she not told me, right? And then my other mentors that I had would have never told me because they never offered me any information of like what I could and couldn't apply for, or like what was available to me. So after that, the other thing too, right? It's like, what do materials look like when you're applying for this? You have to have a personal statement, you have to have a research statement, you have to have a diversity statement, you have to have all kinds of statements. What does that look like? Right? So like I've shared stuff with Claudia, I've shared stuff with my other peers, right, about like what these things look like because other folks have shared that resource like with me, right? So that's something also with the hidden curriculum. Like if you don't know what like a statement looks like, what are you writing? You know what I mean? So just things like that.
Any other questions from students before we head on next one?
Yeah, I have a question. So I didn't know that I even wanted to come to grad school before maybe like last year, a year and a half ago. I did not do any research in undergrad. I said I did not want to. I never pictured myself working in a lab. And now I'm in grad school. So I was just wondering, like for somebody who's kind of like me, like I have no clue how to even like conduct research or what I want to research. I was like, do you have any tips or advice for me, like for my first year, what I should do?
Yes. So neither of my parents went to college. So literally when I was navigating the whole system, I was like, I'm just gonna randomly apply for stuff and see what sticks. And then grad school stuck. So it was one of those things where I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to do this. I found that the university often does have resources like university libraries, for example. I would genuinely go to them because they have librarians who focus solely on research. Like their job is to show you how to do like lit review, how to like look through the library databases, that kind of stuff. They honestly are super friendly and just want to talk to people about research. So like if you are a student who's seeking that, they will gladly talk to you about it. I would also suggest talking to whatever faculty member you may be either paired up with within your department. Do you mind what program did you get into? Or
Public
what
health.
Public health, awesome. Okay, so there are a ton of students who are doing great research there. I would find a grad student who is maybe like close to working on their dissertation or something like that. Whether that's someone who's TAing like an undergraduate course or someone who's like basically has already done work in that field, and see how they did it. You know, because a lot of times I think those students also come in with almost zero experience, and that's totally fine. Like you will be okay. Like you got in for a reason, you know? So I always like to tell people that because I think a lot of times we all struggle with, oh my gosh, we don't know what we're doing and we shouldn't be here. No, you're here, you're going to be here. And it's something that I think there are resources out there, like, so like I said, the libraries, older students within your department, and by older, I mean like have been in the program longer. And then probably faculty members as well. And I cannot guarantee you that every single faculty member will be fantastic and give you information. There are good and bad faculty members, just like I think there are good and bad people to go to for mentorship, you know, and things like that happen. But just try not to get discouraged and just try to find, you know, try to find those routes in because they exist. You just have to kind of find them. And then eventually you could train someone else that comes in too. Yeah.
I think when it comes to like what you want to like research, that sometimes just comes later, right? There are people that like come in and they know exactly what they want to look at and with exactly what like kind of research method and which theories, and like that's amazing, but that's not the case for everyone, right? That might change for you, like depending on which classes you're taking and what catches your interest. Also what you have access to realistically, right? That's kind of going to depend on the like where your department can get you into, what different faculty are studying. So like if you're trying to choose an advisor, right? And you resonate with this one, but they only look at this one thing, that might work for you, right? Studying something similar and it might not. And so it's kind of, don't put that pressure on yourself just yet to figure that out. That'll come later. Yeah.
I think I was on the same boat as you, in terms of like not ever really having done research. I didn't even know that you could do research as an undergraduate. Like I had friends who were doing like an honors thesis, but I didn't really even understand what that was in undergrad, right? Like when you think about like what even is considered research, right? It's just like so many steps to it. I think going to the libraries is a great first step, but I also think again, connecting to like other like graduate students from your department, who might be willing to share what a lit review in that department looks like, what the expectations are, because they already know, right? If you're thinking about like the breadth of a project too, or like what you might want to study and look at, something that like I had to learn, right, was like come back and bring it small. Because my ideas were always like, oh, I want to do this big thing. And my advisors were like, do you want to graduate? You know, like it's like that thing, right? Like it's like, no, think about this one thing that you might want to look at and then go for that, right? But learning what works in your department is going to come from that like knowledge base within there. So I definitely think tap into other folks that you meet there and be like, hey, I'm not really sure like even where to start. Like, what should I be doing, right? Or like, what does a lit review in the department look like? What does the paper look like? Also the expectations like from professors are going to be very different. So what might work in one class works in another. So that's I'd be like, hey, did you take this class? Like, what did this look like? You know, folks will share resources with you. Something that I also learned, right, was like to find other folks who are not in a competition with me, but that are there to take the journey together. And again, that's like what's made like it very easy for me to be like, oh, hey, I heard you were doing this thing. Like, can you share this with me? Yeah. And then they'll be willing to like tap back and be like, hey, I heard you're doing this thing. Like, let's do this. Or if I find something, I'll be like, hey, we should both apply, right? Because like, even if you apply, you're not sure that you're gonna get it, right? So it's like, I want all of my friends to win, right? So.
All right, yeah, I think everybody there have said almost everything. I was about to just add one or two. So someone said, one of the panelists talk about you talking to students, and once you talk to students in your area and you identify how literature review looks like, you probably, anytime you read a paper or before you even start reading, I suggest you have like referencing softwares that you can put all your papers in. So like Mendeley is one that you have all your papers in. Once you have all your papers in, you have the ability to highlight information that you feel like, oh, this you may need later. Or if possible, as you read papers, I think this is one of the best ways. You can summarize the paper. You may not need that paper right now, but maybe in your free time when you read a paper, just summarize it, put it, have a Word document, you have summary of every paper with probably in-text references or bibliography. This is important because once you start writing, you may need this bit of information to put up together so that you don't go back to the original papers. You have all this information. When you have them, you can use them anywhere, you can just use them in all your papers and anytime you have to use them. So I think that will also help in one way to help in your research journey.
I do have one more thing to add because that reminded me. You could also take, like, most departments have like an intro to research or like a research methods course. And you have a lot more flexibility over the courses that you take in your graduate school career. So I think looking at like your degree worksheet and then kind of figuring out like, okay, how many electives do I have? Can I take like an intro to stats, an intro to research? And I have found that in those methods courses, they will have you working on papers and things like that. So even if you don't have something that you're like, oh, I want this to be my thesis or my dissertation, you could at least have like a small project that you kind of like get your feet wet and like, okay, this is how I do research. And then it kind of helps you if you want to expand that later, you absolutely can. But it's kind of like a safe environment to do that type of work that I have found that you just learn through classes. And then that way it's not just like arbitrary homework, but things that you're actually, you know, building skills. So look for those courses too.
Thank you, all of you.
Yeah.
I want to throw in just a quick plug too for the Grad Academy.
Yes.
We have some programs that are specifically designed to help people with research and writing. So we'll talk about those tomorrow. Yeah, any other questions from students?
I'm an international student here, so what piece of advice would you give me?
I do want to turn this over to Godson first, because I think Godson has been fantastic in helping international students like navigate this process. You just are a wealth of information, honestly.
Thank you. Can you please say, repeat the question? The person says they are international student, and then?
What piece of advice would you give me as being an international student?
As an international student in UNLV, I think UNLV is a safe and a welcoming place, first of all, for you, and you are going to experience a better place in UNLV. My advice to you is that, you know, this place is different from home, where we come from. Culture is different, so you are definitely going to be meeting some culture shocks. And also you may have some expectations when you were coming from home. Just try to manage those expectations and then seek help. I mentioned seek already. Seek help like as soon as possible. Don't wait till things become difficult. Don't wait till things become worse before you seek help. If you feel like the course you are doing or the program you are doing is getting like you are getting overwhelmed, there are resources that grad school has support system, that counseling system, they can help you. They can, if it gets to a point that you can't take it anymore and you may have to change program or you may have to change advisor, their support system. Don't feel like you are compelled to be with this particular advisor. If you feel like that's first of all, if the problem is not about you putting in your effort, if it is about you not putting in effort, you try to probably do more from your end. But on the whole, just don't feel attached to a particular person. If you're in a grad school, like I have to work with this, I have to work on this particular thing. Grad school, as we all mentioned, is a very challenging one. It's difficult to navigate, but then people say that if you know what you are doing, you wouldn't be doing it. So sometimes those things are expected, but there are things that we can handle as human beings. So if you feel like this is getting out of hand, talk to someone. Don't hide things, because back at home, most of us are not trained to talk, are not trained to ask questions, are not trained to like talk tough. So, but then America provides us that opportunity to talk, to ask questions, and then to get exposed. So whenever you're getting, something is getting, being it finances, academics, talk to someone. And I'm here, you can talk to me.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Godson. Any other student questions at the moment? Okay, cool. So I'm gonna.
What's the name of the person who has the question? Because I didn't get a name. And then.
My name is Losta Weather. I'm from Nepal.
Nepal. Okay, nice to meet you. Yeah.
Okay, so this is kind of going back to what Vanessa was speaking to a few moments ago. How has your experience in grad school differed from what you imagined it would be like, and what was most surprising to you? Deep breaths happening.
I'm trying to think about what I imagined it to be. There's like, I don't know, there's a lot of grad school memes out there where it's like you're kind of like sitting in a little room and you have like writing all over the walls. And that's kind of what I pictured for most of my research. And most of it has honestly just been me sitting with my laptop, kind of wherever I want to sit. So that has been like a pleasant change, a pleasant surprise. But it's a lot more like, a lot more reading, a lot more writing than I ever thought was possible. And that's important because I feel like I've learned a lot, but at the same time, I also feel like I know nothing. And that I think comes with understanding just the sheer breadth of the type of work that people do. A lot of times, like Vanessa was saying, you have to kind of focus on this very small project, but to you, it's huge. Because I think at the end of the day, like if you do research and you do research well, you understand that things are really, really complicated and there's levels and complexities to anything that you're working on. Nothing exists in a silo, so it's one of those things of learning how everything is connected, and learning how just your work ties into this larger scheme of research at the end of the day. I'll stop there. Yeah, I guess if I think of something else, I'll jump back in, but yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, it's very different than what I thought it was gonna be. But also because I started off like in a different department and I was thinking of like getting my master's and then going somewhere else and studying something else. But sticking in that program and which completely changed, and like now I'm in education and I'm looking at something entirely different, and even the research methods that I'm using are different. And so yeah, there's like the actual like physical realities of it like looking different, but also just what I even thought I was going to be doing and where I would be at is really different. But I think that's a good thing to be like open to where your interests take you, and who you're connecting with and what you're connecting with is like so important, and that's really what's gonna make it sustainable for like a career, right? If you want to stay in academia, as I do. So
I think for me was being okay with feeling either disappointed or disenamored with academics or academia as a whole. Because you think of like academia as like this place where people are always talking about like solutions to maybe like problems, or we're finding ways to make things better, right? But a lot of the times that's just where it stops. It's a paper, right? It doesn't lead to more than that. So that was something I think that was like difficult for me to kind of like put together, right? And I also learned, right, that sometimes people are not their best selves. So being okay with that as well, right? But also that means that you lean on folks who are their best selves. Because you are gonna find like challenges, right? I thought like things were gonna be like smooth, right? I was gonna come in, do certain things, but then also like life happens, right? We're not just students, right? We have families, we have responsibilities. So being okay with sometimes like shifting that focus, right? You can't just focus on school and you have to take some time and do something else. You got to do that. But yeah, that's it, I think, for me.
Yeah, I think everybody have shared most of the challenging things I think we all face as students. But I also came to UNLV at a point when COVID struck. So that was also another challenging part, like getting settled. I started UNLV January 2020 and COVID was like March 2020. So I didn't really get to meet people, know people, then COVID. So it was difficult for me. Had it not been me exposed to being involved with activities like GPSA and also ASA and things, I don't think I would have even met friends like I have now, because when I came to school, COVID and having those kind of friends, especially those in your department, and it provides you the opportunity to share ideas and also to get going. And when you don't understand something, ask questions and then deliberate and ask graduate student brainstorm. So that thing was a challenging bit created by COVID and other things. So that's what I'll say in addition to what everybody shared.
Thank you all. I'd say we have time for one more question. Do any students have any questions? One last chance? Okay. Final question for you all. What is one thing that you have learned about yourself during your time as a graduate student?
So, okay, when I was like 23, I had a therapist that told me, Nicole, you can't save the world. And I hated that. I was so angry. I was like, no, I absolutely can. Like, I'm doing all of this work. I'm working really hard. Like, I can save the world. I've come to learn that that might not be possible, and that's also okay. And I think that's a really, really important thing to learn about yourself, is that like you will grow from this journey. You will kind of like reel in your expectations, but also form new ones. And that's such an interesting thing for me to think about, because I was always just hyper focused on school. And I have found that like the more time I spend in school, I still enjoy it and I still want to get my PhD. But I also feel like more of a whole person, like outside of school too. And I think that's a really, really important part of yourself to develop. Like the things that you like, the things that you don't like, the people you like being around, the people you don't like being around. All of those things, like this is your time to kind of form yourself as a person and kind of understand the impact that you want to leave and continue to, you know, grow into. So yeah, I learned that like it's okay to not be able to do everything. It's okay to just kind of like, you know, tether your expectations in a grounded way. And also like, I learned that I like bugs. That was a completely interesting, don't look at me like that. No, stop. It was one of those things where it was like I was trying to like develop like hobbies outside of school, and now I have like beetles and spiders and things, and I find it fascinating. Stop. It makes me a more empathetic person. So things like that, just learning new and interesting things about yourself and hobbies and things like that. I think that's really, really important to do. And just, you know, becoming a whole person. And I think that's something that a lot of us struggle with when we focus solely on school and academics. It's important to, you know, branch outside of that as well and kind of learn new things about yourself and about the field that you're studying. Yeah.
I think for me it was that I'm a lot more creative than I thought I was. I had to do a lot of like last minute pivots of like, oh, what I'm gonna research or where or how. And so it was cool to see like, oh, like I'm quick on my feet in terms of all of that. Yeah.
I think for me, something that I learned very quickly is that I'm not an academic. Academics are something I do. Like identity wise, right? So like a lot of people, when you talk to them, the first thing they'll tell you like, oh, I'm a PhD student. I'm like, no, I'm me first, right? So that's something that for me I quickly learned, because just the way like that I view life and that I see things are just completely different, right? This is something that I do, something that I enjoy most of the time. But that's not my first identity or something that I need to feel whole.
All right, yeah, I think that one thing I've learned about myself during the grad school is that I mean, grad school itself being an institution for a multifaceted kind of training and for shaping my entire being as a human being. So grad school is just not about me going to get a degree, but a place for me to have that me being shaped holistically, being in terms of my mental, physical, and social welfare. And also to borrow this, there's a popular African saying that it takes like a whole village or a whole community to support someone to go to school. And when you go to grad college, in the reception there is, I think someone has said that it takes the whole, I think it takes the whole village or someone to support them to school, and their support system has been the grad college. So I would say that the grad college has been a support system to us all, and they know how to provide programs and things to help and shaping us to become better of ourselves.
What a wonderful note to end things on. Thank you all so much for sharing with us today.